Hi, Tony and I want to welcome you today to our study in the parables. We're looking at the parable of the wedding banquet in Matthew chapter 22. Dallas Willard, as you probably know if you follow my blog articles, is one of my favorite authors. And he had an article that I read several years ago that just really struck me. He called it barcode religion. The story goes like this. A man went through a supermarket. He found a banana. He peeled the barcode off the banana, put it on a jar of mayonnaise. When he went through the scanner, it read banana, but it really was mayonnaise. Well, what Dallas Willard's trying to get at is some of us think because we've prayed a prayer or been baptized or occasionally come to church that we're secure in our whole life with God. Remember what, not Dallas Willard, but Henry Blackaby said? He said, you can't stay where you are and go where God is. The parable that we're going to look at today is going to challenge us to make sure that we are going where God is. So in the parable of the wedding banquet, we're going to divide it up into sections, and I'm going to make some comments. So Tony will start us off.
The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He sent his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding banquet, but they would not come. Again, he sent other slaves, saying, tell those who have been invited, look, I've prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding banquet.
You're probably familiar with invitations that come out for certain events. So you get one invitation which says, save the date. Then later on, closer to the date, you get the real invitation to the event. This process was a little like that in Jesus's day. They would get one general invitation. Then when the dinner was ready, the servants would go out and say, it's time, come on.
But they made light of it and went away, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his slaves, mistreated them, and killed them.
So you have two responses here. It's interesting, Jesus told this parable two times, once in Matthew 22 and once in Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14 seemed to pick up on this first instance where people were just too busy. Can you imagine? The king has invited you to dinner. Not just a king, the king of all kings. But you're too busy. You have to look after something. Then the other is the negative response that we followed through Matthew chapter 21. The temple authorities who opposed Jesus, who were finding ways that they can do away with him by killing him, he is alluding to them. And if you go back to the earlier parables, this one builds upon the first two parables, which basically says they are really opposing him.
The king was enraged. He sent his troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city.
40 years after Jesus said these words, that very thing that Tony read happened. The Roman army occupied the spot where Jesus and the religious leaders were speaking. And they had broken down the walls, they had come in, they had slaughtered thousands of people, and they were there as victors. Let's remember something. The purpose of parables was to shock Jesus's listeners, to persuade them, to get them to think differently. He wasn't trying to get them told. He was trying to shock them into believing that he had something that they needed and for them to respond.
Then he said to his slaves, the wedding is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to our wedding banquet. Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered all whom they found, both good and bad, so the wedding hall was filled with guests.
Jesus was often criticized for the company he kept. He had tax collectors, he had zealots, he had common fishermen, he had women, possibly if Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, following along and helping him. He had lots of people that were outcasts, besides all the folks that he healed and he touched and all of that. And so he was criticized for the company he kept. The parable said to the religious authorities, you had an invitation too. You rejected it. They accepted it.
But when the king came in to see the guests, He noticed a man there was not wearing a wedding robe, and he said to him, "Friend, how did you get in here without a wedding robe?" And he was speechless.
Now, the fellow didn't come in out of the work life. The man had a chance to put on the proper clothing, and the picture here was he disrespected the banquet. Think about our respect of the Lord. He has invited us to his banquet. Do we come and yet really only come half-hearted, ill-prepared, with little to bring, or do we bring him our best?
Then the king said to the attendants, "Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen."
Now, I'll have to confess to you that I have been hung up on that last phrase, "many are called, but few are chosen," for a long time. I've often said when better books are written, I'll preach better sermons. And the author that I'm reading for this, he helped me understand that. The many, all were called, but not everybody responded. They were banking on the fact that being Jewish, that they were the chosen ones. But Jesus was saying to them, don't bank on that any more than we can bank on putting a banana barcode on a jar of mayonnaise. We'll turn that mayonnaise into a banana. We need to respond to Jesus, and that's the point of this. Jesus told this parable for Tony and for Bob and for other people, for us to respond to him, to make sure that we're living in the kingdom, that we have received his invitation to walk with him, to talk with him, to share our meals with him, to have our daily prayer time with him, to let his loving friendship transform our lives. I'll quote again Henry Blackaby. You can't stay where you are and go where Jesus is. Jesus told this parable to call us to come with him and to be with him. Let's do it. Well, thanks for being a part of this today. We'll see you tomorrow. God bless you and have a wonderful day.